San Francisco used to be a city where you could go out with your family on a nice stroll, and you wouldn't have to really worry about being mugged by people on the street, or have the worry of accidentally poking yourself with a used needle that's lying on the floor, or, get this, accidentally stepping on human waste. It is way too much of a common issue nowadays. Anyway, I want to go ahead and still talk briefly about San Francisco, because that's where this pretty crazy event happened. This was in 2015, and I was going to be attending and participating in the San Francisco Half Marathon with my mom and my sister. The half marathon is divided into two parts. You have the option to do the run that goes over the Golden Gate Bridge, or you have the option to do the run that starts you off in the city. Both of them ultimately lead you to the same ending. It's just on where you preferred. Of course, if you want to do the full marathon, then you just do both, starting with the run that has you going over the Golden Gate Bridge. So anyway, we arrived in San Francisco after an 8-hour drive from Anaheim, California, 2 days before our run, and after checking into our hotel, we grabbed a bite to eat before resting for the night since we would be doing some sightseeing the following day. That goes pretty smoothly. And after carb loading on pasta, we settled in for another evening, excited but also a bit nervous for the run. This would only be my second half marathon, in which the first one I ended up having knee pain by mile 10, those last 3 miles being some of the worst pain I'd ever experienced in my life. But I did at least make sure to train a bit better this time. But little was I to know that running would end up saving us from quite the scary ordeal indeed. So with the run starting at 7 a.m., we wake up at about 5:30 a.m. and we each begin our routines of waking up and getting ready. I had a small piece of a protein bar with some water as I listened to music as I waited for my sister Casey and my mom. At 6:15 a.m., we head down to the lobby of our hotel and we begin our walk, roughly 20 minutes, to get to the location of our half marathon. It was pretty quiet at this hour, there only being light traffic from vehicles and few people walking on the streets, that we initially had thought we had gotten the date wrong for the run. However, we soon saw some folks with their San Francisco half marathon shirts on, and we let out a sigh of relief knowing that we were in the right place at the right time. One group of runners we saw was actually taking a picture, and as we got closer, they asked if we could help them with taking some photos. We told them yes, and I took this woman's camera to begin their photo shoot. They did a bunch of silly poses and made some funny faces, and after taking a few snapshots, they turned their attention to us and asked if we wanted any photos of ourselves. We said yes, and they took my mom's phone to begin taking some photos. That was pretty fun, and after wishing each other good luck, we say farewell. We ended up speaking about how nice that group of runners was as we stopped so I can tie my shoes. And it's at this moment we got interrupted by someone, not a fellow runner, but a messy-looking homeless man who walked out of a nearby alleyway, who looked as if he had seen his better days. I'm not trying to sound like a jerk here, I'm just giving you a description of him so you can get a visual. He had really long dark curly hair, down to around his waist, a scruffy beard, what appeared to be like pieces of bread or something in his beard, and he's got a whole bunch of stains on his shirt. Bear in mind, he was in underwear with no pants on at all. Well, at least he wasn't showing his junk. Yet. I kid you not, when he saw my mom and sister, he no joke took out his little fella and then told my sister and my mom, "You like what you see?" My mom and sister immediately did their best not to barf in that moment, as we each now turned the other way and we begin to briskly walk in the other direction, toward the marathon. Sadly, this creep ends up following us, and I was about to say something to him, but when I turned around, I get the chills go down my spine. I hadn't seen it initially, but in the time we had turned our attention away from him, he had grabbed a hammer from somewhere. Out of nowhere, unprovoked, he brings up his hands to his neck and then does that slit throat thing with his eyes rolled back, kind of like The Undertaker does. Anyway, I told my sister Casey and my mom that we now needed to run, and let's just say we waste no time in doing so, but not before the creep follows us for a few brief moments. We soon lost sight of him as we go around a corner of a street, and as we expected to see him pop out of nowhere, he doesn't. Let's just say that we were pretty on the edge after that, and when we saw a couple of police officers who were on their bicycles, we informed them about the homeless man with a hammer, and they told us they would take care of it. We aren't sure whether or not anything happened with him, but part of me believes he's still out there creeping on others. I just really hope not, but I won't get my hopes up. So anyway, that was the time we went to San Francisco for a half marathon, only to get chased by a homeless man with a hammer that was showing off his little Johnson. Definitely one of the more creepier incidents of my life. 2011. Quite an interesting year, if I do say so myself. Remember how the world was supposed to end on May 21st, 2011? I'm not trying to mistake you with December 21st, 2012. If you remember that whole thing with Harold camping, then you'll know what I'm talking about with that whole rapture stuff. I'm not trying to get too sidetracked here, but this experience of mine did happen a few hours after the supposed rapture was going to occur. I can recall it happening on that day because there were people on the streets making a big deal about it with various signs. By the way, this takes place in San Francisco. So after being relieved of living another day, more like I was waiting for my friend Stacy to get off of work, we ended up going to the Fisherman's Wharf because we were in the mood for some calamari and clam chowder. For reference, we're both in our early 30s at the time, and female. Now, anyone who lives in San Francisco or visits San Francisco, you know the Fisherman's Wharf can be quite busy. On that day, you bet it was jam-packed. We ended up waiting almost an hour to get our food, but it was worth it once our bellies were satisfied. But this would soon change. Toward the end of eating our food at a nearby bench next to the restaurant that we were eating at, a middle-aged, run-of-the-mill man approaches Stacy and I and begins to ask if we were locals. We told him yeah, we were, and he begins to strike up a conversation saying that he's visiting family and it's his first time in the city. He seemed normal enough, not that I'm judgmental, so we start to tell him about the more touristy areas of the city and recommending places that he might enjoy seeing. After the recommendations, he begins to talk about the rapture stuff and whether or not we believed it was actually going to happen. We told him no, and after some jokes here and there, the topic switches over to whether or not we were single, and if we were, if we would like to get some drinks with him. We told him we don't drink and we're just trying to have a girls' night out, but he keeps insisting that we hang out with him since he says he's a really nice guy and would like to get to know us better. Again, we refuse, and we can see him visibly start to become a bit unnerved, as well as showing a bit more anger in his tone of voice. Is it because I'm ugly? Is that why you two don't want to hang out with me? I don't know what his issue was. He definitely wasn't ugly, but it seemed he lacked self-esteem, as well as the lacking the ability to get a hint. Stacy and I kinda just look at each other as if saying, let's just get out of here. And so we excuse ourselves, saying we're going to meet up with some other friends. He stays quiet after we tell him this, and at this point we walk away thinking that it's finally all going to come to an end. However, little were we to know that he wasn't just about to give up that easily. Wait, hold on. I have something for the two of you. We kept on walking after hearing him calling over to us, but the thing was he actually caught up to us and said something that was pretty weird. Look, if it's money you want, I've got plenty of it. I don't mind paying to at least have you two give me a chance. I'll show you, I'm a really nice guy. Again, with his nice guy description, Stacy at this point was so fed up with the dude, as was I. She quite literally puts her foot down and tells him to get lost, since now he's just being a creep. I was just being too kind for my own good and I wasn't saying anything. Anyway, here's when things take quite the turn. I don't know what it was, but calling him a creep seemed to have flipped a switch in his head. He went from annoying and persistent to showing off an expression that showed, "You've gone and messed up big time." Fine, if you're going to be that way. No kidding, I'm caught off guard as he grabs a hold of me. All of this in public, mind you, as people are walking about, and then he whispers into my ear and says, "I can make you feel really good if you just give me a chance." I was so disgusted at this guy's statement, along with his smell now that he had gotten so close to me. I immediately brushed him off of me, and finally now some people who saw the commotion come up and ask what was happening. I didn't care anymore. I had enough, so as loud as I could say, I said, "This pervert just tried to grope me." Oh, you should have seen how suddenly his demeanor had changed. No kidding, as this very tall and buff man started to approach, this creep took off running, not even daring to look back at what was coming to most likely drop him on his butt. That man I just mentioned came up with his wife and asked if we were okay, to which I told him I was now, just that I was a bit creeped out and quite frightened. Eventually, when I'd regained my composure, Stacy and I just decided to cut our evening walk early, and instead we went back to my house to watch a movie with my younger brother, soon putting the creep behind us. I regret not telling the police anything, but I do wonder whether or not they would have done anything. It's San Francisco after all. It seems like criminals and creeps get away with everything there. It's just really all backward. Anyway, I'm ranting here and getting off topic. My word of advice, if I can give it, don't make the same mistake as me. Be a lot more firm with saying no. Don't try being nice because there are people who just can't take no for an answer and they can't get a hint. They'll try to do anything they can to get what they want, which is just plain sad if you ask me. I was going through a pretty rough patch in 2014. I just lost my best friend Andrew to cancer, who was pretty much like a brother to me. We had met in elementary school and hung out all the time, even up until his passing when we were in college. I was devastated. Losing my best friend at only us being the age of 23 really hit me hard. Really, if it wasn't for the help and support of my sister, I don't know what I would have done. I hate to even think that way, to be honest, but I'm sure others have been in the same boat. I can definitely say without the benefit of the doubt, if you are going through a rough spot, seek out the help of family and friends. Not to say there isn't a grieving process, that's almost always natural, but when you start having the mindset of, "It should have been me," you should seek help. Anyway, my sister at the time was living in San Jose, California, and when I had arrived for my 2-week stay at her apartment to try and heal, she took me to visit various locations and sites that I wanted to see. This included the Winchester Mystery House, a place I'd wanted to visit for the longest time. Another place I wanted to go to was San Francisco, and so on an early Friday morning, after grabbing some breakfast near the university, which is in the downtown district, we hop into my sister's car and we begin our trip to San Francisco. It was a nice and crisp 65 degrees that day, with some partly cloudy skies, which made good company as we arrived at the Golden Gate Bridge. We spent about 3 hours exploring the bridge itself, along with all the little historical sites around it. This included a small park with a creepy tunnel that you can walk through. I emailed the creepy fox after I sent in my story, and we were able to confirm it was the same tunnel that he walked through where he got that picture of that dark figure. He actually has a picture of it on his Instagram, so you should check it out. Quite a crazy story for that one. I know he talked about it on one of his older videos. Anyway, back to me. We fast forward to about 1 p.m. and we're starting to get pretty hungry. My sister tells me that she wants to take me to a restaurant called the Cliff House, which unfortunately closed in December of 2020 due to the pandemic. Although I have heard they plan on reopening it sometime in the future, It's just that they can't use the name The Cliff House as it's trademarked. As we exit that one creepy tunnel so we can follow a small path that leads us back to the parking, we happen to notice someone in the distance who's acting a bit off. He's screaming at the sky, and it looks as if he's having a complete nervous breakdown as a woman stands next to him. San Francisco, am I right? As we got closer, he now begins charging in our direction, and the jerk actually walks up to me, and I really feel like he did this intentionally. He bumps into my shoulder, and he says, "Watch where you're going. You're lucky if I don't strangle you right now." Having someone tell you that is pretty bizarre, but as I had been working at Disneyland at the time, I was fairly used to dealing with crazy people. This was no different, as I now proceed to de-escalate the situation to the best of my ability and tell him to have a nice day and hope things get better. Yeah, this turned out to kinda be a bad idea, I think because I gave off this sarcastic tone. But could you really blame me? It's not every day you're threatened by violence. "What did you say to me, punk?" He pushes me, which causes me to fall down onto the ground, to which my sister then tells him to knock it off. He told my sister to be quiet before that woman he was arguing with, which I assumed was his girlfriend, walks over and tries to calm this jerk down. At this point, I had to do all I could not to lose my cool, because I was really about to get up and punch him, but he's massive in comparison to me, being a short and scrawny 5'9", 160 pounds. "What are you gonna do about it, kid?" The guy was clearly looking for a fight, but again, I wasn't, so I just start to walk away, as the girlfriend tells him just to let it go. You would think this would be when this crazy event comes to an end, but no. I guess I just really rubbed this guy the wrong way. Suddenly, I hear him come charging in my direction, and just as he's about to swing for a punch, still running at me, I put my foot out and the dude face plants right on the concrete cement after hitting my foot. He now suffers a pretty bad nosebleed, and he tells me that he was going to kill me for that. However, thank God that some good Samaritans who were just beginning to walk in our direction come over to back me up. They had seen the whole thing taking place. Now clearly outnumbered, the jerk just pinches his nose and tells his girlfriend to follow him, and they head back to a car and take off. I'm guessing to get a checkup on that nose, as I was almost certain it had broken after that nasty fall. Needless to say, quite the strange, but also scary encounter, as I wasn't sure if I would have been able to fend him off. We did make it to the Cliff House, and soon laughed it off at how karma ended up teaching him a valuable lesson. We aren't sure what they were arguing about and what caused him to let out his rage on the first person that he saw, which was me. But at least I know I will most likely never see him again, because screw that guy, he sucks. When you hear the word vacation, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Being able to get away from your mundane Monday to Friday work schedule, or school schedule in my case, and just enjoy yourself. Being able to surround your life with delicious foods, fun activities, and trips to the spa sounds like the perfect recipe for relaxation. And while my vacation did start off just like that, little was I to know the scary experience I would have that left me going, wow. Alrighty, so like any story you've heard on the Creepy Fox channel, allow me to give you some context in order to paint a better picture. I'm female, 30 years old currently, and I decided to go on vacation to San Francisco in 2013, which would make me 22 years old. You see, I was a huge fan of the band Paramore, and they would be playing at the Warfield music venue in downtown San Francisco. I had already planned on going to San Francisco later that year, so I thought to myself, why not just go a little bit earlier? I can knock out two things, and see my favorite band perform too. Nice. Along with me would be going my fellow Paramore fan and cousin, Eric. He was 24 years old at the time, and just like me, enjoyed attending concerts and listening to loud music in his room. Anyway, when we arrived in San Francisco, we had no idea how long of an adventure we'd have just to get to the Hilton Hotel in the downtown district. Once there, we checked in, put our bags on our beds, then we went to grab some late lunch. After we spent the rest of the day exploring the nearby districts before calling it a night. Fast forward to the next afternoon and we arrived at the concert venue and waited for about 4 hours until finally we were let in. The show was insane. I can't tell you how awesome it was to see Haley, Taylor, Jeremy, and the rest of the Paramore crew performing their greatest hits, including songs off the newest album that they had released that year, their self-titled one. Now, there was a bit of an issue at that show. Haley Williams, the lead singer of the band, was sick that evening, so the crowd was helping her sing the songs, which Eric, myself, and the rest of the fans attending had no problem in doing so. Fast forward to after the show, both Eric and I are still full of energy and excitement, and we are beginning to get pretty hungry. We remembered a little convenience store we had passed on the way to the venue, and we decided to head on over to pick up some chips, sodas, and maybe even a couple of sandwiches. Now, during the day, there was a lot of foot traffic. You'd see people in their business suits walking to work, and teenagers and college students hanging out and just doing whatever. But at night, it was a completely different story. Apart from how much quiet it was, you did notice an increase in the drunks, and even the druggies, as we saw a couple of people smoking out of a glass pipe, and even one who injected himself with a needle, most likely heroin. Ouch. Now, I'm not one to judge, everyone has their own story and background, and unfortunately there are a lot of people who struggle in life, but I don't think that gives you an excuse to attack others. What exactly am I talking about, you might be asking yourself? Well, once we grabbed our snacks from the convenience store, we began to notice a man who we originally saw sitting a few feet from said store, drinking an alcoholic beverage out of a brown paper bag as he started to follow us. It wasn't until we made it a couple of turns down streets that we would make the confirmation. Now, this wouldn't have been an issue if it wasn't for the fact he was getting a lot closer to us and saying some things that were giving Eric and I the chills. He kept repeating over and over again that he was going to stab us and that we were dead meat if we didn't stop walking away from him. We're still a good 3 or so minutes from the hotel, mind you, and we just keep saying amongst ourselves that if we just ignore him, he's going to leave. But that didn't happen, because now he starts to yell at Eric and I, calling us various vulgar names and saying he was going to kill us. Eric was just about to say something, but what the man does next sends us running like a pack of zebras getting chased by a hungry lion. No joke. Guy reaches into his jacket pocket, fumbles around with something, and then he takes out a knife. He starts to yell again and then goes into a straight-up sprint. As you can imagine, Eric and I are caught off guard at this moment, and we immediately start to book it toward the Hilton Hotel, wondering just what we had done to cause this random man that we don't even know to try and come at us with a knife, and most likely wanting to stab us. These next moments feel like an eternity, but luckily it was only maybe 20 seconds. As we turn the corner of where the Hilton Hotel is and can see it with our very own eyes, we looked back for a brief moment and saw this guy go flying. Turns out he wasn't that great on his feet because he bumped into a part of the sidewalk that was a little misaligned and elevated and does a complete faceplant on the concrete, not before the knife goes flying underneath the car. Eric and I hold back on saying anything as we continue to run and reach the hotel. We see a security guard and instantly told them about the man who was chasing us just moments prior. He walked out of the hotel, only to return about 10 seconds later, saying that the man we described just got back up and turned back and disappeared, not before cursing at the girl with the red dyed hair and the guy with the denim jacket. That would be us. Anyway, to say we weren't left scarred after that, and a bit confused would be quite the understatement. I look back on this now and I sort of feel sorry for the man. Just a little. More so, I'm just left wondering what causes someone to get so mad at you that they begin chasing you with a knife. Were we really that bad of people for trying to get some late night snacks? I don't know. I just hope he got some help, and his life has since turned for the better. So this happened in March of 2014, after I gotten out of work. For context, I was a security guard at a concert hall in downtown San Francisco. I was actually pretty hungry after work, and I knew there was nothing at home, so that was going to be out of the question. I opted to get my usual combination of hamburger, french fries, and drink at my local fast food joint near my home. The thing is, when I arrived, the line was forming out of the parking lot. So weird because, on the contrary, when I looked through the front window, it was empty inside. I guess that's the thing with fast food restaurants. People are too lazy to even get out of their vehicles, but I shouldn't be one to speak. I was going to do the same thing. Tired and annoyed, I opted to park my vehicle and step inside to order. Those poor employees, I'll tell you, the ones handling the drive-thru and the ones in the back cooking, that is one thing I'll give them props for, the ability to handle such stress from angry customers. Anyway, as I wait my order, a young lady no older than 30 years old comes up to me with quite a scared look across her face. "Hey, what's wrong? Is everything okay?" I said in a compassionate voice. "There's a man that's been following me for the last couple of blocks. I don't know who he is." Before she gets to say anything else, a homeless-looking man comes into the store and then calls out and says, "Oh, sorry about that. She's my daughter. We got into a bit of a fight. I hope she didn't give you any problems." One look at this woman who's dressed up in business casual, and this guy who's wearing a white tank top t-shirt with some stains, shorts with holes, and sandals that looked as if they were about to come apart, who looks in no relation to this woman, strangely tells me that this guy was telling a lie. Not that I really needed to question this conclusion. I asked the man if he really was the father, then what was her daughter's name. He just stood there for a few seconds and then took a chance and said some generic name like Christine. Not a match. Figures. So now I told the guy he needs to leave. I thought that would have been enough, considering he just made a fool of himself, but I guess he still had one last trick up his sleeve. And I, this woman, and the employees inside the fast food restaurant were about to bear witness to this man's insanity. I kid you not, in a matter of moments, the man, unlike in most of these stories where you hear them take out a knife, pulls out a taser of all things. He now starts to curse at me and says I was ruining his night of hunting. His words, by the way, not mine. Clearly this guy was trying to do some serious harm, and when I heard the young lady gasp from fear, I knew I had to do something. So I instruct her to get behind the counter with the employees and then say, "Call 911. I'm now blocking this creep and acting as intimidating as I can, saying that if he comes any closer, there would be problems for him." Well, thank the Lord that after more threats, anger directed at me and at the woman, he just seemingly flips a switch in his head and just walks out of the restaurant without saying another word. Not gonna lie, but my adrenaline wouldn't stop pumping. It got so bad that I determined I was desperately trying to fight off a panic attack. I mean, it's not every day somebody takes out a taser and then says they were going to tase you with it. Unfortunately, I never did find out whether or not the police found the guy, as all that happened was I and everyone inside gave our statements and descriptions which were written down in paper format, and then I finally went home. I don't know where that woman is today, but I really hope she's never had to deal with creeps like this again. Please, to anyone listening out there, if your idea is to stalk someone, please don't do it. You don't realize the kind of stress and anxiety it puts that person into. If they aren't interested, move on with your life and don't grow obsessed. Please. It's just common sense and common decency too. To give you some background information, myself and my girlfriend at the time, who in this story we will call Alexis, had formed our own little musical act. I had met her in middle school, and after being friends for years, we finally were a couple. But that's besides the point. The point of this story is talking about a pretty concerning experience we had. It was the summer of 2010, and we had just graduated from high school a couple of weeks ago in June. Now, during our time in high school, we would play music at parties or even at friends' homes, but we never actually thought about going on a road trip and playing our music to other people. That was actually a dream of ours, and this summer we were planning on doing just that. Our plan was to drive from our town in Southern California and visit various coffee shops and other musical and art-driven locations. I remember our first stop was playing at a coffee shop in San Francisco. This was actually our first time ever visiting, and I can recall how excited we were to finally have our little dream coming true. So we do make it to San Francisco and proceeded to play our music just fine, albeit with a larger audience than we expected. To be honest, I was expecting maybe about 50 people at most. But little did we know this coffee shop goes all out, and we were playing in front of at least 500 people. They had this parking area right next to the shop, and that's where they had this huge stage for the musicians to play. Okay, well, fast forward until after the show. That's when the series of events would start to occur. Alexis and I were actually planning on leaving the same night because we had another show in Oregon the next evening. Before leaving, however, we stayed around to talk to a couple of the other musicians. I recall after talking with them for a while, the group of guys who I'd say were in their late 20s walked up to us and wanted to know if they could get a picture with us. Okay, well, nothing wrong with that, I guess. We take a picture with them, and one of them says to my girlfriend, "Hey, wouldn't you rather want to spend time with us? Your boyfriend seems kinda boring." Obviously, I wasn't too happy with hearing that, but I figured they were just messing around. We ignore it and soon head over to where our car was parked. As we're going down the alleyway, myself and my girlfriend Alexis can see the same group from earlier, seemingly waiting at one of the corners. Our car was just a few feet away from us, but before we got inside, they end up saying aloud, "Come on, honey. Are you sure you don't want to stay here with us?" That was enough for one evening. We get in our car and soon try to put the encounter behind us. It's now around 10 p.m., but with all the coffee I had, I was looking at pulling an all-night drive. I'd say around an hour later, we're pretty much out in the middle of nowhere, and we ended up stopping to take a break. Up ahead of us, there was a stop with a convenience store that we were planning on filling up our car at. Well, as we pulled into the gas station, I did become aware of a white van pull up behind our vehicle. Now, I didn't really pay attention to it too much, but for some reason, it did look quite familiar. It's like I'd just seen it, but I couldn't really explain why. Either way, me and my girlfriend walked inside the convenience store to pick up some snacks and water. As we're paying for our things, I happened to take a look out the window, and I could see a sight I would never forget. Remember those guys from earlier in San Francisco? Turns out that white van I'd seen them stand next to in the alleyway was the same van that was parked behind our car. I can now see as one of them grabs a crowbar and breaks one of the windows and starts taking out our guitars from the back seat. I wanted to go out there and say something, but the cashier stops me in my tracks because he noticed that one of them has a pistol. Immediately, he gets on the phone and calls nearby police officers, who ended up arriving about 10 minutes later. Looking back, I regret not going out there and saying something, but then again, there were more of them than me, and they're armed with weapons. Let's just say I wouldn't have stood a chance. Sadly, our window was broken and our guitars were stolen. Sadly, we don't make it to the show since we had to get our window repaired, but the good news was the police actually caught them after they were caught trying to break into another car. Luckily, we did end up getting our guitars back, albeit with a few dents and scratches, but we continued on with our musical adventure, and life has since treated us fairly well. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button and leave a comment telling me what you all thought, and subscribe and turn on notifications if you're brand new. Also, consider grabbing some Creepy Fox merchandise, which you can see right below the video. Also, make sure to check out our song, Make a Start. You can find it on Apple Music, Spotify, or even here on YouTube. Go to my YouTube channel and check it out underneath the Creepy Fox topic section. And if you want early access to brand new videos with no advertisements, as well as exclusive narration videos not available to anyone else, consider becoming a channel member. Which, speaking of, I'd like to go ahead and give them all a shout out. Thank you to Robbie, Bo, Spunky the Nutcase, Rice and Beans, Scott, Sean, Corey, Linz, Maribel, and our newest member, Medu Satel. Thank you also to the regular viewers who watch the uploads, like, comment, and share them with their family and friends. I appreciate and love every single one of you. Thanks once again for stopping by, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Take care, and have yourself an amazing day.